Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming to my class this afternoon, all about interest rate buy downs. So we've got two different buy downs that we can look at: permanent buy down and then temporary buy downs. So they are slightly different, but pretty much work the same way. So what I'd like to do is start off with permanent buy down. So as you can see, this is a loan that I've just run. It's an FHA 800 credit score for about a $200,000 asking price, which is $193,000 loan. Today, we do not have par pricing. So the best price we can get is either 6 1/4 or 6 1/8. So with the permanent buy down, I would say to the client, I can get you 6.25 and you get a small rebate of around $373, or you can get 6 1/8 and it will cost you more or less $200. So that's our starting point. The buyer might say, well, I want a considerably lower interest rate. I've got some money, or maybe there's some concessions from the seller. So, you know, they might have a few $1,000s to put towards this. So I can go down and say, all right, let's look at round about 1 point, which would get them down to 5.5% interest rate. And this would cost them almost $2,300, which is not bad. If he wants a full point, so say he's going from 6 1/4 all the way down to 5 1/4, it's going to be 1.636 points, and that will cost him $3,212. So that could come from their closing costs, or the seller could help with these concessions here. So that's the permanent buy down. So what I like to do when there's the cost there, I don't want to go past 3 years of making that money back. So let's see, where were we? 5 1/4. So that's $3,200. The difference between there is $1,209 and $1,084. So that's how much they would save a month, $125. So if we divide that by the cost of $3,212, it would take them around 25 months to make that money back, which is well inside the 36 months that I would suggest. So that could possibly be a good option for them. But in the market we're at right now, the chances of a refi coming down in a year or two, it might be worth saving that money, keeping that person fluid, or putting that money towards closing costs or somewhere else. But of course, we do not have a crystal ball, so we can't say whether the rates are going to come down. But even if it drops, you know, a point in the next year, they would still be ahead of the game. So that is a permanent buy down. Now, a temporary buy down is slightly different. So for this allows the interest rate to be bought down between 1 and 3 years. The sweet spot we look at is called a 2-1 buy down. So that means over the next 2 years, the interest rate from the starting point drops 2%. So it's going to be 2% in the first year, 1% in the second year. So if we look at this graph here, so we start at 6 on a loan amount of 180,000. We start at 6, and that's what we have to qualify the buyer on, the initial interest rate. The concessions from the seller, and this has to be paid by the seller. It cannot be paid by the buyer or borrower. So for this, a 2-1 buy down on a $180,000 loan would be close to $4,000 from the seller. And that is how much the buyer saves over the 2 years. And it's split between 12 months payments for the first year, and it saves them $220 a month there. The second year, they save $112. Then it goes back to that initial 6%. So as I said before, there's a chance of refining in the next couple of years. So if they're saving this much money up front instead of over 30 years, this could be a great option. And say in the first year, what if the rates drop from 6 down to 4.5? So they can quite happily refi then. And so the difference between what they've already spent on the buy down goes towards their refi. So if they're 12 months in, they would have $1,354 left, and that can help with refi costs, which is pretty awesome. We do have a number of other options. We've got the 1-0 buy down and a 3-1 buy down. They work the same. We've also got a 1-1 buy down. So there are a number of options here. So the 1 buy down, first year, it buys it down to 5%. It comes down from 6 down to 5 for 1 year. That saves them $1,354. We've also got a 1-1 buy down that over 2 years, it just comes down 1%. So that 5% interest rate could be put in there for 2 years instead of just 1, unlike the 2-1 buy down where it actually drops down to a 4% rate. And so that cost would be around about $2,700 coming from the seller. I mean, that's a good overview of what we can offer on the 2-1 and 1-0. So which is better? It depends what situation the buyer is in. We always look at the length of time that the buyer wants to stay in the house. If they want to stay over 20 years, maybe 30 years. Maybe they're retiring and see themselves, retiring at 60 and living there till 80, maybe 90 years. Maybe a permanent buy down is a better option, especially if they don't feel like they're going to refi in the next 10 or 15 years. But on average, most people only stay in their house for around 8 years. They could get this temporary buy down up front, get the savings done there, maybe refi in 3 or 4 years, lower the rates then, and then in 8 years they're going to sell. So they're not going to have the full savings of a permanent buy down over 8 years. That's probably not worth their while, but a 2-1 or a 3-1 buy down could be a great option for them. And I think that's pretty much the overview of permanent and temporary buy downs.